The crystalline walls of the High Council chamber pulsed with an ominous crimson glow, as Princess Maya of the Zephyrian Empire stood motionless before the 7 ancient judges. Their elongated forms towered above her on their floating platforms, their pale blue skin seeming to absorb the harsh light rather than reflect it. Each council member bore the traditional scars of their rank across their foreheads, intricate patterns that told the story of 1,000 conquered worlds. Maya kept her expression neutral despite the fury burning in her chest. She had known this day would come ever since she had dared to speak against the endless expansion campaigns that had consumed their empire for the past 3 centuries. Her criticism of the resource drain caused by constant warfare had fallen on deaf ears. But worse than that, it had marked her as a traitor to the Zephyrian way of life. Council Prime Zirion raised one skeletal hand, and the chamber fell into absolute silence. His voice carried the weight of eons when he spoke, each word carefully measured and deliberately cruel. Your defiance has brought shame upon the royal bloodline. Your questioning of our sacred mandate has poisoned the minds of our young warriors. But perhaps most damning of all, your very existence mocks the purity of our race. Maya felt the familiar sting of that last accusation. 3 years ago, the imperial physicians had delivered their devastating verdict after extensive testing. Princess Maya, heir to the Zephyrian throne, was medically infertile. In a culture that prized genetic perfection above all else, this diagnosis had effectively ended her political career before it truly began. Her younger sister Vera had immediately been named Crown Princess, a role she embraced with disturbing enthusiasm. The infertility had been kept secret from the general population, but the High Council knew. They had used it as justification for increasingly marginalizing Maya from important decisions. Now they were ready to use it as the foundation for their ultimate humiliation. Council member Lydia stepped forward, her silver eyes gleaming with barely contained malice. In their infinite wisdom, the Council has devised a punishment that fits your crimes perfectly. You will be sent to mate with a primitive species, to attempt what our greatest scientists have declared impossible. Maya felt her blood turn cold. She had heard whispers of this practice in the darker corners of the Imperial archives. Occasionally, Zephyrian nobles who had fallen from grace were sent to breed with lesser species as a form of exile. None had ever returned with offspring. Most never returned at all. The species selected for your education is known as humanity. They inhabit a small system on the outer rim of our territory, recently brought under our control through the Titan mining conflicts. These creatures are barely evolved beyond their primitive ancestors, driven by base emotions and crude instincts. Another council member, his voice dripping with disdain, continued the explanation. We have selected one of their military leaders, a specimen captured during their pathetic resistance to our expansion, Captain Alex Morrison of their so-called Earth Defense Force. Our intelligence suggests he possesses above-average cunning for his species, though this means little by our standards. Maya realized the true depths of their cruelty now. They were not simply exiling her to breed with an alien species. They were sending her to mate with an enemy prisoner of war, someone who would likely view her with nothing but hatred and contempt. The symbolism was perfect from their perspective, the defective princess attempting to create life with a conquered savage. You will remain with this human for one full cycle of their planet's rotation around their star. If you return bearing offspring, your status will be restored and you may resume your position in the succession. Of course, we all know this outcome is medically impossible. The chamber filled with the sound that passed for laughter among the Zephyrian elite, a harsh harmonic resonance that made Maya's teeth ache. They were enjoying this moment immensely, savoring her humiliation like a fine wine. Council Prime Zirion gestured toward the viewing portal, where Maya's personal vessel waited in the docking bay below. Your ship, the Silent Dawn, has been equipped with everything necessary for your journey. The human will be transported to a neutral station orbiting one of their outer planets. You will have privacy for your attempts. As Maya was led from the chamber by the ceremonial guards, she caught sight of Princess Vera watching from the observer gallery. Her sister's expression was unreadable, but Maya thought she detected a flicker of something that might have been regret. Or perhaps it was simply anticipation of claiming the throne permanently. The corridors of the imperial palace seemed longer than usual as Maya made her way to the docking bay. Servants and minor nobles she passed quickly averted their eyes, unwilling to be associated with someone who had fallen so far from grace. Word of her sentence would spread quickly through the palace, and by morning, the entire empire would know of her disgrace. The Silent Dawn was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, its obsidian hull designed to bend light around its edges and confuse enemy sensors. Maya had commanded this vessel through a dozen campaigns before her fall from favor, and it pained her to think this might be her final journey aboard it. Her personal aide, Commander Zara, met her at the airlock with barely contained emotion. The younger Zephyrian had served Maya loyally for 5 years, and her distress at this turn of events was obvious despite her attempts to maintain proper protocol. "Your quarters have been prepared with all necessary medical equipment, Princess. The human will be delivered to the rendezvous point in 72 standard hours." Maya nodded curtly and moved toward the command deck. As the Silent Dawn's engines hummed to life and the ship began its departure from the Imperial homeworld, she allowed herself one final look at the planet that had been her entire universe. The irony of her situation was not lost on her. The High Council believed they were sending her on a fool's errand, confident that her genetic defect would ensure their entertainment at her expense. But Maya had spent years studying alien species in her role as a military strategist, and she knew that humanity was far more complex than Zephyrian propaganda suggested. Their recent conflicts with human forces had revealed tactical thinking that rivaled their own, and their technology, while primitive by Zephyrian standards, showed remarkable adaptability. These were not the mindless savages that Council propaganda portrayed them as. As the Silent Dawn entered hyperspace and began its journey toward human territory, Maya found herself wondering about Captain Alex Morrison. What kind of person fought against impossible odds in defense of their homeworld? What drove someone to resist an empire that had conquered half the galaxy? She had expected to feel nothing but humiliation about her mission, but instead found herself experiencing something, unexpected curiosity. For the first time in months, she had a purpose beyond simply existing as a disappointment to her people. The journey to the rendezvous point would take 4 days, giving her time to study the intelligence files on both humanity in general and her assigned mate in particular. Perhaps this punishment would prove educational in ways the High Council had not intended. Deep in the ship's medical bay, diagnostic equipment that had remained silent for 3 years suddenly registered the faintest anomaly in Maya's biological readings. The change was so subtle that the automated systems dismissed it as sensor drift. But something fundamental had shifted in her genetic structure the moment the High Council had pronounced their sentence. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony that even surpassed that of the Zephyrian High Council. The prison station orbiting Europa hung in space like a metallic spiderweb against the backdrop of Jupiter-swirling storms. Maya studied the structure through the Silent Dawn viewports as her ship approached the docking bay. The station was a joint construction between human and Zephyrian forces, built specifically to house prisoners from both species during the ongoing territorial disputes. She had spent the 4-day journey reading everything available about Captain Alex Morrison, and the intelligence reports painted a picture that disturbed her expectations. Rather than the savage warrior she had anticipated, Morrison appeared to be a tactical genius who had repeatedly outmaneuvered Zephyrian fleet commanders despite having inferior technology. His capture had only occurred when he deliberately surrendered, to prevent the orbital bombardment of a civilian colony. The docking process was handled by automated systems, sparing Maya the awkwardness of interacting with the station crew. As she disembarked, Commander Zara handed her a small communicator device. "The station warden will escort you to the designated quarters. The human is already secured in the adjacent chamber. Your medical equipment has been transferred from the ship." Maya nodded and made her way through the sterile corridors of the prison station. The architecture was purely functional, designed to house dangerous individuals securely rather than provide comfort. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows on the walls, and the constant hum of life support systems reminded everyone aboard that they were suspended in the vacuum of space. Warden Kyle Brooks met her at the central hub, a tall human female with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Despite being tasked with guarding prisoners, she treated Maya with professional courtesy, rather than the hostility Maya had expected. "Princess Maya, your quarters are prepared as requested. Captain Morrison has been informed of the arrangement and has agreed to cooperate. I should warn you that he has requested access to our tactical database regarding the recent ghost ship incidents." Maya paused at this unexpected information. Ghost ships. She had heard whispers of mysterious vessels appearing at the edges of both human and Zephyrian space, but the High Council had dismissed these reports as propaganda or sensor malfunctions. Ghost ships. What exactly has Captain Morrison been told about these incidents? Warden Brooks gestured for Maya to follow her down a corridor lined with reinforced chambers. "Not much, honestly. Both our governments have been keeping the information classified, but Morrison has a theory that these ships are targeting military vessels specifically while avoiding civilian targets entirely. He thinks there might be an intelligence behind the attacks." They stopped outside a heavy security door marked with both human and Zephyrian warning symbols. Maya took a deep breath, preparing herself for her first encounter with the primitive savage the High Council had selected for her punishment. The door slid open, revealing a spacious chamber furnished with basic amenities from both cultures. The human stood near the far wall, studying a tactical display that showed fleet movements from the past 6 months. He was taller than Maya had expected, with dark hair and green eyes that immediately fixed on her with surprising intensity. "Princess Maya, I presume. Captain Alex Morrison, formerly of the Earth Defense Force." His voice was calmer than she had anticipated, lacking the aggression she had expected from a captured enemy soldier. More disturbing still, his posture suggested someone who was analyzing her just as carefully as she was studying him. "Captain Morrison, I trust you understand the nature of our arrangement." Alex turned away from the tactical display and faced her directly. "I understand that your government considers this some sort of punishment for both of us. What I find interesting is that they chose to house us in a facility that just happens to have detailed records of these mysterious ship sightings." Maya felt her confidence waver slightly. She had prepared herself for dealing with a brutal warrior or a cowering prisoner, not someone who immediately began questioning the deeper implications of their situation. "You believe our placement here is not coincidental?" Alex gestured toward the tactical display. "Look at the patterns yourself. These ghost ships have appeared at 17 different locations over the past 8 months. Every single appearance coincides with either human or Zephyrian military exercises. They disable both fleets equally, then vanish before anyone can get detailed sensor readings." Despite herself, Maya found her attention drawn to the data. The pattern was indeed unusual, suggesting a level of coordination that ruled out random piracy or territorial raids. "Your point being?" Alex sat down at the small table in the center of the room, clearly inviting her to join him. "My point is that whoever is operating these vessels has technology that makes both our species look primitive by comparison. They can phase in and out of normal space, disable our most advanced weapon systems, and seem to know exactly when and where to strike, for maximum effect." Maya remained standing, unwilling to show any sign of accepting his invitation. "Even if this is true, what does it have to do with our current situation?" Alex leaned back in his chair, his expression becoming more serious. "Because I think your High Council and my government both know more about these ships than they are admitting, and I think our being placed here in a station with access to this specific data is not the punishment it appears to be." The suggestion was absurd, yet Maya found herself considering it. The High Council had many flaws, but they rarely acted without multiple layers of motivation. Could there be something more to her exile than simple humiliation? "You suggest that my punishment is actually some form of covert mission?" Alex nodded, toward the medical equipment that had been installed in the adjacent chamber. "Or maybe someone wants to see what happens when human and Zephyrian genetics are combined under controlled conditions. Your people have been studying us for years, and we have been studying you. But neither species has ever had the opportunity for this kind of direct biological collaboration." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. The medical diagnosis that had branded her as infertile had always seemed unusually definitive, given the limited testing that had been performed. What if it had been deliberately falsified to create the conditions for this exact scenario? That is an extremely serious accusation, Captain Morrison. Call me Alex. And yes, it is a serious accusation. But consider the alternative explanations. Either your High Council is even more sadistic than I gave them credit for, or there is something about human Zephyrian genetic compatibility that someone desperately wants to understand. Over the following days, Maya found herself drawn into increasingly complex discussions with Alex about military tactics, political theory, and the mysterious ghost ship phenomena. His insights into Zephyrian strategy were disturbingly accurate, while his knowledge of human technological capabilities far exceeded what their intelligence had suggested. More unsettling was the gradual realization that she enjoyed these conversations. Alex treated her as an intellectual equal rather than a political pawn or a genetic failure. When she shared her own theories about optimal fleet formations, he listened carefully and offered thoughtful critiques rather than dismissing her ideas. The fourth day of their cohabitation, Maya experienced the first symptoms, a subtle dizziness during their morning discussion about quantum mechanics, followed by an unusual sensitivity to the station lighting systems. The medical scanners in her quarters detected minor fluctuations in her hormone levels, but the readings were within normal parameters for Zephyrian physiology. Alex noticed her discomfort during their evening meal. "Are you feeling all right? You seem different today." Maya considered deflecting his concern but found herself providing an honest answer instead. Minor physical irregularities. Nothing significant. Alex studied her face with an expression of growing concern. "Maya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. When your physicians declared you infertile, how extensive were the tests they performed?" The question struck at the heart of her deepest shame, but Alex's tone was gentle rather than intrusive. "Limited testing." The diagnosis was based primarily on genetic markers rather than comprehensive physiological examination. Alex was quiet for a long moment, then spoke carefully. "Human reproductive biology is obviously different from yours, but there are certain universal principles. Genetic markers can be influenced by environmental factors, stress levels, and even psychological conditioning. A diagnosis based solely on genetic analysis might not tell the complete story." That evening, as Maya lay in her quarters listening to the constant hum of the station life support systems, she found herself considering possibilities she had never dared to contemplate. What if her infertility had been a convenient fiction? What if this entire arrangement had been orchestrated for purposes she could not yet comprehend? Outside her viewport, Europa's surface gleamed in Jupiter-reflected light, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, ghost ships continued their mysterious patrol. Maya closed her eyes and wondered if she was about to become part of a story far larger and more dangerous than the simple punishment she had believed herself to be enduring. In the medical bay, her automated monitoring systems registered another subtle change in her biological readings, a fluctuation so minor that the computers dismissed it as sensor drift. But the emergency klaxon shattered the peaceful quiet of the prison station at exactly 0347 hour station time. Maya jolted awake in her quarters as red warning lights bathed everything in an ominous crimson glow. The automated voice system began, broadcasting in both human and Zephyrian languages simultaneously, creating a cacophony of overlapping warnings. Ghost ships detected approaching from multiple vectors. All personnel to emergency stations. Defensive systems activating. Maya rushed to her viewport and felt her blood freeze at the sight that greeted her. 7 massive crystalline vessels hung in space around the station, their translucent hulls seeming to bend starlight around their edges. Each ship was easily 3 times the size of the largest Zephyrian dreadnought, yet they moved with impossible grace through space. The door to her quarters slid open, and Alex appeared, already dressed, and carrying an emergency toolkit. His expression was grim but focused, the look of someone who had faced impossible odds before. "We need to get to the command center now. These ships are jamming all communications with the outside. Whatever they want, we are on our own, until help arrives." Maya grabbed her personal equipment and followed Alex through corridors filled with panicking station personnel. The ghost ships had appeared without any warning on the sensors, materializing out of empty space as if they had been waiting in some parallel dimension. Warden Brooks met them at the command center, her face pale but determined. "The situation is worse than we thought. These ships have simultaneously appeared at 12 other locations throughout human and Zephyrian space. Both the Earth Defense Force and your Imperial Navy are under coordinated attack. The main tactical display showed feeds from across the galaxy, each one depicting the same scene. Ghost ships emerging from nowhere to disable military vessels with weapons that seemed to ignore conventional shielding. Neither human nor Zephyrian forces were proving effective against the mysterious attackers." Alex moved to one of the sensor stations and began analyzing the readings. "Maya, look at this. These ships are not just attacking randomly. They are targeting specific vessels and installations with surgical precision." Maya joined him at the console and immediately understood his concern. The ghost ships were systematically disabling the most advanced vessels in both fleets, while leaving older and less sophisticated ships relatively untouched. It was as if they were preventing either species from developing beyond a certain technological threshold. "They are trying to keep us primitive. But why?" Before Alex could answer, the station shuddered violently as some kind of energy beam struck the outer hull. Emergency bulkheads began sealing automatically as sections of the station lost atmosphere. The ghost ships were no longer content to simply observe. Warden Brooks' voice cut through the chaos over the intercom system. "All personnel to emergency shelters. We are losing structural integrity on decks 7 through 12. Alex grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her toward the nearest emergency shelter. But as they ran through the corridors, Maya felt a strange dizziness overtake her. The station lighting seemed too bright, and the constant vibration from the ghost ship attacks made her nauseated in a way that had nothing to do with fear. She stumbled, and Alex caught her before she could fall. His expression immediately shifted from tactical concern to personal worry. "Maya, what is wrong? You have been having these episodes more frequently over the past week." The emergency shelter was a reinforced chamber designed to protect essential personnel during catastrophic station failure. As the heavy blast doors sealed behind them, Maya found herself alone with Alex and a handful of station technicians. The tactical displays showed that the ghost ships had stopped their direct assault and were now simply maintaining position around the station. Maya tried to stand, but another wave of dizziness forced her back down. This time the symptoms were accompanied by sharp pains in her abdomen that made her gasp involuntarily. Alex knelt beside her and pulled out a medical scanner from the emergency supplies. His training as a military officer included battlefield medicine, and his expression grew increasingly concerned as he reviewed the readings. "Maya, I need you to stay very calm while I tell you something. These readings are showing biological changes that should not be possible according to everything we know about Zephyrian physiology." The scanner displayed information that made Maya question her understanding of her own biology. Hormone levels that were off the charts, cellular activity in regions that had been dormant her entire life, and most impossible of all, clear evidence of fetal development. "That cannot be accurate. The medical diagnosis was definitive. I am incapable of reproduction." Alex continued scanning, and the readings became even more extraordinary. Not only was Maya pregnant, but the fetal development was progressing at an impossible rate. Based on the cellular growth patterns, conception had occurred only days ago, yet the development stage suggested weeks of gestation. "Maya, this is not natural pregnancy. Something or someone has altered your genetic structure to make this possible. The development rate suggests intervention by technology far beyond either of our species." As if responding to their conversation, the ghost ships suddenly changed their behavior. Instead of maintaining their positions around the station, they began moving in complex formations that seemed to focus their energy on specific sections of the facility. The tactical displays showed similar pattern changes at all 12 attack sites. The ghost ships were no longer randomly disabling vessels. They were converging on locations where human and Zephyrian personnel were housed together. Alex stared at the display with growing horror. "They are not trying to destroy us. They are trying to prevent something specific from happening." and I think that something is related to your pregnancy." Maya felt another wave of pain, stronger this time, and the medical scanner began registering even more dramatic changes in her biology. Whatever was growing inside her was not entirely human or entirely Zephyrian. The genetic markers suggested something unprecedented. The intercom crackled to life with Warden Brooks' voice, though the transmission was filled with static from the ghost ship interference. Unknown vessels approaching from human space. Large fleet signature. Estimate arrival in 30 minutes. Through the emergency shelter viewport, Maya could see new ships emerging from hyperspace. The sleek lines and aggressive weapon configurations marked them immediately as belonging to the Earth Defense Force. But these were not rescue vessels. They were warships, approaching in full battle formation. Alex recognized the lead vessel immediately. "That is the New Horizons under Captain Beth Sullivan, one of our best tactical commanders. But why is she approaching with weapons armed?" The answer came minutes later as another fleet emerged from hyperspace on the opposite side of the station. These ships bore the distinctive purple and gold markings of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy, and Maya immediately recognized the flagship, the Crimson Dawn. "My sister Vera commands that vessel. She would only leave the capital if something catastrophic was happening." As both fleets took positions around the station, the ghost ships began to move again, but this time their behavior was different. Instead of the aggressive posturing they had shown earlier, they seemed to be retreating to defensive positions. Alex checked his scanner readings again, and his expression became even more troubled. "Maya, the fetal development is accelerating. At this rate, birth could occur within days rather than months. Whatever these ghost ships are, they have been waiting for this exact situation." The realization hit Maya like a physical blow. Her infertility, diagnosis, her punishment by the High Council, her placement at this specific station with this specific human, the appearance of the ghost ships precisely when her pregnancy reached a critical stage. None of it was coincidental. This was orchestrated. Someone or something manipulated events to ensure that I would be here, with you, at this exact moment in time. The ghost ships suddenly stopped moving and hung motionless in space between the approaching human and Zephyrian fleets. For the first time since their appearance, they began broadcasting a signal that both species could detect and decode. Alex managed to patch into the transmission using the emergency shelter communication system. What he heard made both of them realize that their situation was far more dangerous than either had imagined. The signal was not random noise or tactical communication. It was a message in a language that predated both human and Zephyrian civilization. Yet somehow Maya found she could understand every word. The hybrid must not be allowed to reach maturity. The genetic combination threatens the established order. Compliance will result in preservation of both species. Resistance will result in elimination. Maya placed her hand on her abdomen and felt the impossible life growing within her. Whatever her child represented, it was important enough for ancient powers to manipulate galactic politics and risk open warfare between two species. Outside the emergency shelter, 3 fleets faced each other in space, while the fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance. And at the center of it all, Maya carried the key to secrets that someone had spent centuries trying to keep hidden. The storm that had been building was about to break, and Maya realized that her child might be the catalyst for changes that would reshape the galaxy forever. The emergency shelter shook violently as the ghost ships began emitting a low-frequency resonance that seemed to penetrate every molecule of the station structure. Maya clutched the medical scanner as another wave of accelerated development coursed through her body. The fetal growth patterns were unlike anything in Zephyrian medical databases. Alex monitored the tactical displays with growing alarm. The human and Zephyrian fleets had moved into attack formations, but neither seemed willing to fire the first shot. The ghost ships hung between them like silent judges waiting for some predetermined moment to act. Captain Beth Sullivan's voice crackled through the damaged communication systems. "This is the New Horizons to all vessels in the area. We are detecting massive energy buildup from the unknown craft. All ships maintain defensive posture and prepare for possible evacuation." Princess Vera's response came immediately afterward on the Zephyrian command frequency. "Imperial forces will not retreat from these invaders. All vessels prepare for coordinated assault on my command. Maya felt a stab of fear that had nothing to do with her physical condition. Her sister had always been aggressive, but attacking ships with obviously superior technology was suicide for both fleets. The ghost ships suddenly stopped their harmonic resonance and began to change. Before Maya's eyes, the crystalline vessels started to shift and flow like liquid metal, reforming into new configurations. Each ship grew larger and more complex, sprouting additional hull sections that defied conventional physics. Alex grabbed her arm as the transformation accelerated. "Maya, something is happening to you as well. Look at the scanner readings." The medical display showed that Maya's biological changes were synchronizing with the ghost ship modifications. Every time the vessels added new structures, her genetic patterns shifted to match. Whatever technology was reshaping those ships was also reshaping her from the inside. Then the pain hit her like a physical blow. But this was not the discomfort of accelerated pregnancy. This was something forcing its way into her mind. The emergency shelter filled with a presence that was ancient beyond measure and completely alien to both human and Zephyrian understanding. When the mental contact fully established, Maya found herself standing in a vast crystalline chamber that existed somewhere outside normal space. The ghost ships had not been vessels at all. They were mobile extensions of something far more complex. A figure materialized before her, though calling it a figure was inadequate. The being that appeared was constructed from living geometry patterns of light and energy that hurt to look at directly. Its voice resonated not through sound but through direct neural interface. "You are Maya of the Zephyrian bloodline, daughter of genetic sequences we planted millennia ago. Your reproductive compatibility with the human designated Alex Morrison was not accident but careful design." Maya tried to speak but found that thoughts were sufficient in this strange space. "What are you? Why have you done this to me?" The entity shifted its geometrical patterns in what might have been amusement. "We are the architect's child. We shaped your species and the humans from the same base genetic template scattered across this galaxy. Eons before your civilizations developed, speech images flooded Maya mind, showing the ancient past. Architect vessels seeding dozens of worlds with carefully modified organisms. Each species was designed to develop along predetermined paths with specific strengths and limitations. The goal was to create a stable galactic civilization under architect control. Humans and Zephyrians were never meant to encounter each other directly. The architects had kept the two species deliberately separated through manipulation of their development patterns. Wars, resource conflicts, and territorial disputes were all carefully orchestrated to prevent contact, but your species evolved beyond our projections. The entity continued its explanation. Both humans and Zephyrians developed faster than anticipated. They began exploring beyond their designated boundaries, making contact. Inevitable, Maya began to understand the scope of the manipulation. Every major conflict between their species, every diplomatic failure, every missed opportunity for peace had been engineered by the architects to maintain separation. The hybrid growing within you represents our greatest fear. A child born from both genetic lines will possess capabilities that threaten our control over galactic development. Such beings could potentially evolve beyond our ability to guide or contain them. Maya felt another wave of accelerated development, but now she understood what was happening. Her child was not just growing, it was being actively modified by architect technology. Each change brought new capabilities that neither species possessed individually. Your sister Vera and the human Captain Sullivan are both unknowing agents of our influence. Their aggressive tendencies have been carefully nurtured to ensure conflict rather than cooperation. But your pregnancy has created variables we did not anticipate. The mental chamber began to shift, and Maya realized she was seeing the current situation from the architect perspective. The three fleets facing each other in space were all pieces on a board game that had been playing out for centuries. "We offer you a choice, Maya of Zephyria. Surrender the hybrid child to us and both your species will be allowed to continue their development under our guidance. The wars will end and prosperity will follow. Refuse and we will eliminate both civilizations to prevent genetic contamination." Maya felt the weight of two entire species resting on her decision, but she also felt something else. The child within her was responding to the architect presence with its own form of consciousness. Whatever was growing inside her was already aware enough to understand the stakes. I need to understand something. Maya projected her thoughts toward the entity. If you created both our species, why do you fear what they might become together? The architect pattern shifted. Again, and for a moment Maya sensed something like uncertainty in its ancient consciousness, because together your species might achieve what we ourselves never could. True evolution beyond the limits of genetic programming. The hybrid child represents the first step toward a form of consciousness that could surpass even the architects. The revelation was staggering. The beings who had manipulated galactic civilization for millennia were themselves bound by limitations that hybrid children might transcend. The architects were not gods but gardeners afraid that their crops might grow beyond their control. Maya felt her child respond to her emotions with a surge of development that registered on scanners throughout the emergency shelter. Alex. Voice reached her across the dimensional barrier as her consciousness began returning to normal space. Maya, the fleets are powering weapons. Both sides think the other is preparing to attack. The ghost ships are moving into position between them as the mental contact faded. Maya realized she had seconds to make a decision that would determine the fate of billions of lives. The architects were waiting for her answer and both fleets were moments away from opening fire. But Maya had learned something during the contact that the architects had not intended to reveal. The ancient beings were not omnipotent. They were afraid and fear made them vulnerable. She opened her eyes in the emergency shelter and looked at Alex with new determination. I know what we have to do, but it requires both our species to trust each other completely. Are you willing to risk everything on the possibility that our child represents hope rather than threat? Alex checked his scanner readings one more time, then met her gaze with absolute conviction. After seeing what these architects have done to keep us apart, I think our child might be exactly what the galaxy needs. Outside the shelter, 3 fleets prepared for a battle that could end 2 civilizations while ancient beings waited for an answer that would determine whether the galaxy remained a carefully tended garden or became something wild and free. Maya placed her hand on her abdomen and felt her child respond with a pulse of energy that registered. On every sensor within 1,000 kilometers, the choice was made, and the consequences would reshape the galaxy forever.